Alright, I think we are going live. We're about to find out. Let me actually quickly close up a couple things here so we don't have Twitter and the likes dinging in the background. So this has been a little while coming. Let's actually see if I can swap back as well to the previous slide. Hey, I can. Awesome. Okay, we're trying this out live just for a little bit of a change here because why not? So let's have a little bit of fun here tonight. So let's make sure this is coming through. Yeah, it looks like it is. I think we're good. Now, I'm aware that this is kind of an interesting time to be doing it, given it's 7 o'clock here in New Zealand at night, so that means it's going to be super duper early in the UK. It also means it's really, really, really late at night in certain parts of the US, but that's alright. We're going to have some fun anyway, so let me quickly close down a couple more things here, and I think we're good to go. So I should spin back up to the top here, and we'll get underway. So, my name is Josiah, I'm also known as Chilling Silence, and today we're going to look at the importance of ProgPoW and RandomX for DigiByte. I'm subtitling this Decentralizing DigiByte in... Let's bring this back. I'm subtitling this Decentralizing DigiByte in more ways than one. That's a terrible tongue twister. Now, this presentation, while not overly technical, will have a few geeky terms in it that I'll try and explain as we go. So, to get this started on the right track, you're going to hear me mention CPU being the central processing unit inside of your PC. You're also going to hear me mention a GPU being the graphics card in your computer. I'm going to mention those terms a lot, so I just wanted to kind of clarify them for the non-techies up front. Now, a little bit about myself. I am a volunteer for DigiByte. I predominantly make educational and informational content about the project, doing things such as technical interviews, guest starring on podcasts, speaking at universities, regular news update videos, authoring of guides, code testing, acting as support for integrators in DigiByte, presentations such as this, and more. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not actually a developer myself, and I cannot code to save myself. However, I'm nerdy enough that I figured out how to compile things at a young enough age, and I fell in love with the white text scrolling past on my screen as applications and operating systems such as Linux get built from source code. But before we get underway, let me explain some blockchain fundamentals here and what a hashing algorithm is. So, Bitcoin and DigiByte are both made up of blocks, all in a chain, one after another. Hence the name blockchain. Now, the way that this works is by machines all over the world racing against each other to solve for X. This is a little bit different, though, from the way that you would have done this with your usual high school algebra, because this is some advanced mathematics, and the only way to solve for X is to pick a random number and to run it through a mathematical equation. You can't work backwards when trying to find X for a blockchain. Now, like I've mentioned, machines from all over the world are racing against each other, trying to find the nonce. When they do, they are rewarded. This number, this solving for X, is known as the nonce, the number ones. Now, to make matters even harder, X, or the nonce, must also be a certain difficulty. Think about it like saying that X must be over 1 billion. So when they find this nonce, they're rewarded with a small amount of cryptocurrency, be it Bitcoin, DigiByte, and when they also find X, they announce it to everybody else in the world, and everybody starts working to find X all over again. So you're looking for X, you tell everybody you've found the solution to the mathematical equation, everybody starts over on the next one. So when we're talking about an algorithm, we're talking about the kind of math that machines use when they're looking for the nonce, or solving for X. Think about it like only being able to use multiplication, but not division when you're looking for X. Now, Bitcoin uses SHA-256, Litecoin uses the scrypt algorithm, DigiByte originally also used the scrypt algorithm, but now we've got 5 different, I was going to hold up 2 hands to give me 10, we've now got 5 different algorithms that are each racing independently, but any of those 5 are considered valid. Now, why does this all matter? Well, it's this math that we are going to be changing. We're changing what the DigiByte network accepts as valid so that we can retire some of the hardware that's no longer serving DigiByte as well. Perfectly non-confusing? That's okay. Just remember that we're solving for x, and where we've got to guess for x at random, we can only use a certain kind of math to arrive at our answer. So, staying true to my reputation, I'm going to kick this off with a little bit of history. Sorry, I'm just also looking over here. Will I be able to use my iPhone to mine DigiByte? I'll come to that a little bit down the path when we talk a little bit more about RandomX. Now, staying true to my reputation, I'm going to kick this off with a little bit of history of days long since past. Back before ICOs, of a happier time, mostly. And a time when cryptocurrency mining was almost entirely GPU bound, and even Bitcoin could be mined in your CPU, or GPU. Now, back then, the entire network of Bitcoin's hash rate was equivalent to around 70. That's 70 of today's most common SHA-256 miners. It's now around 1.5 million times more. Now, for those unsure, an ASIC is a specialized, custom-built, and ultra-high-speed computer that just does one thing and one thing really fast. In this case, it's the math for the SHA-256 algorithm. Back when DigiByte launched in 2014, DigiByte used the scrypt algorithm with blocks being found every 60 seconds, and it was able to be mined on your graphics card just like the likes of Dogecoin and Litecoin were at that stage. Now, there were a number of reasons for that, but if you look back at the Litecoin launch announcement on the Bitcoin talk page, it has the most telling mention of a CPU proof of work using scrypt algorithm is very innovative, is what it says. And it also mentions using scrypt allows one to mine Litecoin while you also mine Bitcoin. This is largely believed to have been a strong contributing factor to Litecoin's longevity. Now, over time, that's obviously changed, and scrypt was being mined on your graphics card when DigiByte launched back in 2014, with Bitcoin predominantly being mined on FPGAs and some quite early ASICs. Again, for the uninitiated, FPGAs are reprogrammable specialist hardware that is able to be optimized to do things like cryptocurrency hashing. But it can be changed to use a different algorithm should you want to when you turn it on and boot it up. But back to DigiByte. The fact still remained that you could mine DigiByte on your graphics card, which helped significantly, if you ask me at least, with the launch and the early uptake of the DigiByte blockchain. While not entirely the sole premise for the scrypt choice, it was a benefit nonetheless. scrypt then became mined on scrypt ASICs in roughly mid-2014, just like Bitcoin's SHA-256 was. And after progressing onto ASICs, there is basically nothing further that you can progress on to, just more further and further highly optimized ASICs. So, DigiByte was then upgraded in September of 2014 from only accepting the one scrypt algorithm to being MultiAlgo, meaning there are 5 different options that you can use to solve for x. 5 different options that we accept as all being independently valid. Now, this MultiAlgo upgrade brought about different people with different types of hardware from all around the world, because different hardware is more efficient at solving for x with different algorithms. So, we also decreased the block timing from 60 seconds down to 30 seconds, and a couple of other things as we did it. But at the time, the 5 different algorithms that were chosen with a broad coverage of different hardware types were SHA-256, first of all, being the Bitcoin algorithm. This was ASIC mined. There was also scrypt, the Litecoin algorithm, which we retained effectively. This was also ASIC mined. The Qubit algorithm, which was CPU mined. The Skein algorithm being GPU mined, and the Myriad-Grostel algorithm being GPU mined as well. Now, this was partly important at the time because it brought back GPU mining along with other improvements like I mentioned. Over time, though, this changed, and by the end of 2017, Qubit was able to be GPU mined, no longer on your CPU, and then eventually ASIC mined as well. The same went for Skein and Myriad-Grostel. They were all able to be mined on FPGAs and ASICs. and it remained this way specifically for 2 years until 2019. Myriad Grossel was then replaced with the AutoCrypt algorithm, which was an algorithm focused on being mined just on FPGAs. So this leaves DigiByte at the end of 2020, which we are now, December, and to be honest, I've kind of written this whole presentation over the last 5 or 6 weeks, in and off. This leaves DigiByte at the end of 2020 with 4 different ASIC mineable algorithms and 1 FPGA mineable algorithm. So any attempt at mining on your graphics card after about 2018 was basically pointless due to the extreme advantage that these ASICs have over a home computer. You simply wouldn't get any DigiByte. So ProgPoW and RandomX want to change that and bring back mining to within the reach of the home miner. It's one of the many benefits. Now, with ProgPoW and RandomX, it means that even if you're not rocking the latest generation and top-of-the-line hardware, you can still participate in mining DigiByte. The more people who are mining, the higher the hash rate will be, and the higher the hash rate, the better overall security for the network. Same as always. Straightforward enough. Now, again, a quick little bit back of history though. Back in 2017 with the SigWit upgrade, the development team were looking at replacing 2 of the hashing algorithms with ithash, which is from Ethereum, and Equihash from Zcash. Now you can see this in the source code for the releases, this one in particular being for 7.17.2. However, it's kind of good that they didn't, because at the time, neither of those had been thoroughly reviewed and audited, and ASICs have been subsequently created for both of them. So, what we want with these replacement algorithms is to specifically target CPU and GPU hardware. So, ideally, this will mean that SHA-256 becomes ProgPoW. This would give us one algorithm that we aren't dominant in, being scrypt. One ASIC algorithm that we are dominant in, being Skeen. One FPGA-focused algorithm, being AutoCrypt. One GPU-focused algorithm, being ProgPoW. And one CPU-focused algorithm, being RandomX. So this effectively means that we have one algorithm for each type of hardware, with ASICs being the exception. But perhaps one day in the future, we can look at doing something with scrypt. Or, who knows, DigiByte might even one day be the dominant hash rate in it. This brings us to a really good question. Why RandomX and why ProgPoW specifically? There's not a lot of security benefits, basically, when it comes to adding a 6th or a 7th, is the short answer for why don't we just add more. Carrying on, though, from why ithash and Equihash wouldn't have been ideal, is that they weren't audited by hardware engineers or specialists in their field, or if they were, they weren't audited by enough. Those 2 algorithms were written by cryptographic coders, which is cool. But this means that when they designed those algorithms, they were designed for certain hardware, but they didn't maximize and make full use of that particular type of hardware's capabilities. So this is kind of like running your latest model superbike on regular and unleaded petrol, and just not bothering to top it up with premium or racing fuel. It's that lack of optimization, which is where many of these performance increases come in from other types of hardware, such as FPGAs or ASICs. So again, maybe it's not the best analogy, but the truth of the matter is that ProgPoW was based on ithash, but has been incredibly fine-tuned to make the most of all of a graphics card's available power. So, ProgPoW, in fact, has been scrutinized so much by the Ethereum community, which is arguably the largest GPU mining community in the world. The Ethereum community has paid for multiple independent reviews by third parties that have been basically commissioned to analyze the ProgPoW algorithm to ensure that it is maximizing the GPU's use as much as possible. These reviews were overall largely favorable, with some minor suggestions which have been taken on board since. The idea being that by having an algorithm that makes the most of a GPU's hardware, which is what ProgPoW is, you remove any financial incentive to even bother trying to create an ASIC for it, Given it can cost tens of millions of dollars for you to do so, it might not even be successful, and hopefully in this case it would have very little to no advantage over a GPU anyway. These audits basically state, yeah, ProgPoW does what it says it will do. RandomX is very much the same as ProgPoW, however the target is your computer's CPU. There we go. RandomX has also had 4 completely independent reviews or audits from some of the most renowned entities in their fields. Some funded by the Monero community, some funded independently. Now, the idea here being is that these reviews, the idea being behind these reviews is that they would provide feedback on the algorithms before they have been implemented into their respective projects that they were originally intended for. As such, I'm not aware of any other algorithms that have received this level of scrutiny that ProgPoW and RandomX have. They appear by all means to be the best in class, most suitable for the hardware for which they were intended. This is why the DigiByte network is specifically looking at ProgPoW and RandomX. So, gazing into the future with my non-existent crystal ball, if this CPU and GPU mining truly is a path that the DigiByte community wants to maintain, should these algorithms ever have an ASIC created for them, there's nothing stopping the network from performing another upgrade in the future to replace them with a newer algorithm or an updated version of themselves respectively. For now though, they appear leagues ahead of all other algorithms for the aforementioned reasons. Now, to be completely honest, DigiByte could simply add a 6th or a 7th algorithm. There's nothing from a technical standpoint that's preventing that. However, you don't gain some of the benefit that takes place when we simply replace an algorithm, which is the increase in security. Which brings us to an important aspect of this proposal. How much does it actually matter if DigiByte has a CPU or a GPU mineable algorithm, and what would happen if we don't perform the upgrade? Well, I mean, so there's a few ways of looking at this, namely the security aspect, there's the distribution aspect, and there's also the decentralization aspect. Now, I'm intentionally separating the distribution versus the decentralization, but I want to carry on just talking about the security, and which is basically why we're not just going to add a 6th or a 7th algorithm. I'll come back to those other 2 shortly. So, at the moment, DigiByte makes up approximately 0.06 to 0.07% of the global SHA-256 hash rate. That's under 1/10%. Now this chart here is to scale at a pixel level, at least when I created it, and so it's almost universally agreed upon that SHA-256 needs to go. In fact, as far as I'm aware, all of the developers, the DigiByte Foundation, they all universally agree upon that. You will find the odd home miner who doesn't want to mine Bitcoin with their SHA-256 ASIC instead of mining DigiByte, and they're really all that we've seen who will occasionally disagree with that. But to be honest, that's okay. Thanks for the comments here as well in the live chat. I can see the ghost, Tom. It's really cool to see you guys in the chat there. Now, having the likes of RandomX or ProgPoW replace SHA-256 in an upgrade would be hugely beneficial for the security of the network. And we're going to try some back-of-the-napkin math here. I don't have a slide for this, but if we were to take just the current RandomX hash rate, though I'm sure it would increase a bit over time or with new interest from DigiByte miners, for example, this hash rate that we can see, which is on both Monero and QRL, Quantum Resistant Ledger, it's approximately 1.5 gigahash of RandomX. This means that there is around about 160,000 high-end PCs worth mining it. If you look at give or take a 3900X being high-end, and they're all splitting around about $90,000 per day. Now, RandomX would replace one of DigiByte's algorithms. Let's presume it's SHA-256, which gives us 1/5 of the block rewards. So there is 1,152 blocks per algorithm, 550 DigiByte per day, give or take, per block, give or take, which gives us around 630,000 DigiByte a day, which is roughly, give or take, $15,000 US per day per algorithm at current pricing, or at least it was when I did the math, give or take a week ago. I know it's gone up in the last day. Still with me? 90,000 a day total RandomX rewards for Monero, which is ballpark 15,000 a day for DigiByte if we were to split it. Again, this could go up or down. This would mean that if we use Monero's numbers as a very rough guide, we would have approximately 40,000 high-end computers mining DigiByte, or 150,000 mid-range computers just on RandomX alone. That's a lot of computers working to secure the network, which brings me to the next point, being decentralization. Right now on SHA-256, we have the equivalent of approximately 1,100 Antminer S19 Pros. Now, even if people are using hardware that's a little under 2 years old, such as the Antminer S15, that's a maximum of 3,500 devices on the network. That's not very many people mining with SHA-256. It's pretty centralized, all things considered, and especially as we've seen the number of SHA-256 pools consolidating, it's just becoming less and less ideal. So, on the one hand, we have 3,500 miners at best, presuming nobody, unlikely, owns more than one ASIC, compared with 40,000 to 150,000 miners at a good guess. One is clearly far more decentralized than the other, and this is before we even factor in the possibilities of doing things such as mobile mining and encouraging people from all over the world to participate. So, sure, mobile mining might only make you a cent or two each day in terms of profit over the cost of the power for charging your cell phone overnight, but it's cost you next to nothing to do it. And it's got these people involved with the network, owning their first DigiByte, and a whole lot more that we'll come back to shortly. But let's keep talking about why distribution is just different from decentralization. ASIC mining requires a significant upfront investment. Just gonna grab a drink here. Now, this investment is not just a hefty financial investment. After all, it's $1,000 or more on an ASIC that you're buying to try out cryptocurrency mining. And this puts it out of reach of a significant number of people. But also psychologically, it takes a lot to commit to as well. You're basically banking that buying this particular product will pay for itself, along with the cost of running it, hopefully in under a year or two, if it ever does. Or otherwise, why not just spend that money on buying the product in the first place, being DigiByte? Because when it comes to most casual miners, people looking to dabble or try it out, they oftentimes don't actually break even on the price of an ASIC. As such, this is actually a big turnoff for a lot of people. They're simply not interested in participating in the network in that way. And a lot of people who are hopefully watching are presumably not mining with ASICs. I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. There's not as many SHA-256 miners out there. However, with CPU and GPU mining from RandomX and ProgPoW, the upfront investment is basically non-existent. It's pretty much zero. They likely already have a PC, a laptop, or a smartphone because that's how they're interacting with the blockchain. You send and receive transactions after all, and you're going to do it with a device, so why not mine on it? As such, there is no barrier to entry aside from what is effectively a quick download, and off you go. So it's a really, really great incentive to try something out, and if users like it, they can either purchase additional hardware, or they can purchase additional DigiByte if they so desire. That option's always still there. But that's the interesting thing with casual CPU and GPU mining, is because users don't need to sell off their newly mined DigiByte on a monthly basis to pay for high power bills, which I know all about. Something very fascinating happens. They hold on to it more. Users are more likely to keep what they've mined instead of going to an exchange and needing to sell it off to pay for their power. Now, don't get me wrong. I've mentioned in the past that selling on an exchange to pay for the power is part of the whole entire game theory that goes in behind proof of work, and it's incredible how this all ties together. But with DigiByte being multi-algo, we've got more than enough of that with the other algorithms that will remain. So we have people that are more likely to try DigiByte out, more likely to try mining DigiByte, they're more likely to hold on to their DigiByte. And this overall results in a broader distribution of the DigiByte asset itself, with less centralization around a few larger mining entities. So, CPU and GPU mining also covers something else when it comes to the distribution. It onboards those who cannot or who are unable to purchase from an exchange in both developed and emerging nations. Really cool to see the chat going on here as well. There, the innovation of DigiByte, really surprised year by year, can't wait for 2021. Yeah, John, I totally agree, mate. Now, back to the presentation. If you stop and think about it for a second, on almost every single exchange, you require some form of KYC, of know your customer, right? That's not an option for some people for a variety of reasons, be it from the inability to get a bank account, international sanctions, whatever. There's heaps of different reasons. However, with CPU and GPU mining, that's not the case. There is nobody who can say no to you and no. There's also the added bonus that any DigiByte that you mine are effectively fresh and untainted. There's no way for anybody in the world to know who you are or that you are associated with a particular address that you've mined to. It is the ultimate in participation and in privacy. This becomes all the more important when we look at the likes of the recent Ledger wallet breach, where people's addresses at home, their names, their email addresses, and other such details have all been publicly leaked. What better way to provide an environment for participation in the blockchain than by allowing somebody to do it anonymously and permissionlessly? But it brings me to the most common question that I get about this. Why not proof of stake? Why don't we just replace one of the proof of work algorithms with proof of stake instead? And that's a great question, one that people in the DigiByte development community, the broader mining community, etc., have been contemplating for the longest time. And there's a few reasons. I'm just seeing in the chat here, would love to mine each night on my mobile since it's my only device. Yeah, I think that would be awesome, and hopefully that's something that we'll be able to get to with RandomX. So, these are some of the reasons why not staking. Number one, there's nothing that staking does that proof of work doesn't actually do better, aside from the incentivization to run a full node, because you can mine without running a full node with your CPU and GPU, for example. Number two, people still actually have to purchase DigiByte upfront from an exchange, which is a serious investment to have any sort of even moderately worthwhile return, which rules out a lot of people from participating. As such, number three, there are still gatekeepers and people who know who you are, who can trace your transactions or even stop you from withdrawing DigiByte from an exchange. We've seen it happen before, for example, when it comes to the likes of Poloniex. They've stopped people from withdrawing their DigiByte from an exchange. Reason number four, the rich get richer. It's a poor way of distributing the DigiByte asset itself. Reason number five is that it doesn't really solve anything as such. It's not that great in particular. And reason number six, which I don't have on the slide here, is that exchanges are the real winners out of this, because the unfortunate truth is that exchanges actually have the keys to a really, really large amount of DigiByte. It could end up centralizing DigiByte in a lot of negative ways. So, to put this to bed, I've done some really rough math here. Let's work with a little bit of round numbers just to give you a little bit of an idea. There's currently 14 billion DigiByte in circulation out of our 21 billion. That means that there is 7 billion still left to be mined by 2035 over the next 14 years. So 1/5 of that, if we were to replace one algorithm with staking, it's going to mean that we've got approximately 1.4 billion DigiByte over the next 14 years that will be stake rewarded, hypothetically. Current daily rewards going to staking would equate to only around about 611,000 DigiByte, which is approximately $15,000 give or take at the time that I did the math, which again, price has gone up very recently, so it may be slightly off, but you get the picture. Now, If we take the annual rewards from February to February 2022, you'll get approximately 208 million DigiByte, because the emission slows by about 1% each month. So this means that the total annual value of all staking rewards for February 2021 to February 2022 would be worth, give or take, $4.4 million US, which isn't actually too shabby in the grand scheme of things. But if you were to go out and buy 100,000 DigiByte, which is just a number that I've plucked out of thin air, then at an estimate based on staking rough reward amounts, you'd probably receive a little under 3,000 DigiByte a year, which is currently around about $60. The break-even point in current investment for you to actually cover your costs of renting a VPS, or a virtual private server, to stake from and run a node from would mean that you would need to spend $8,300 and have that kind of large investment in DigiByte. I mean, I say large, but for some people it's nothing, for other people that's unfathomable. So now, naturally, things are going to change over time. Price will fluctuate, go up, go down, whatever. But for now, there's basically no reason for staking. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There is nothing. There's no benefit for us. It doesn't solve any problems. The only thing that it would incentivize would be running a full node, and we get that through other ways instead. So, who knows what the future may hold? Don't get me wrong. I'm not ruling this out in the future. And again, I don't pull the strings. It's not up to me to make these decisions, but from what I can see based on this, it just doesn't seem wise at all. So a really quick recap here on CPU and GPU mining, specifically RandomX and ProgPoW. CPU mining will allow for the broadest participation with effectively zero upfront cost to do so. Now sure, you're not going to be a millionaire overnight, but that's not really the point. The point is that you will have freshly minted DigiByte. You didn't have to buy them. Anybody can do it. Anybody can participate in securing the network, and you will be rewarded for doing so. You can do it from a PC, a laptop, or hopefully even a cell phone. Now, someone asked before in the live chat about an iPhone. Apple don't really like cryptocurrency and the idea of that, but there's a decent chance you'll be able to do it from Android, and that's something that I'll talk about a little bit more later on in upcoming videos and things. So you can be in a first world country, or you can be in a developing nation, and you can use what existing hardware you have without any cost barrier to entry. This is the big pull to get people invested in the network, interested in DigiByte, participating in securing the network, and financially rewarding them for doing so. Now, GPU mining, being the second one, is slightly more scalable because you can run multiple GPUs off of a single computer. Though it is naturally a little less distributed as a result because of that cost of a GPU. However, it allows you to invest a little bit more in getting a better GPU if you want, even if it's just for your gaming PC. That was how I personally, even myself, got involved. I bought 2 graphics cards back in the day, back in 2013. You can get onboarded without too much trouble, and usually you will reap slightly better rewards for securing the network compared to CPU mining because of that slight upfront investment. Now, compare that to staking, which is basically the rich getting richer. It offers little to nothing over CPU or GPU mining, but it has a bunch of downsides for very, very little reward for almost everybody, unfortunately. So, as such, this is why I am so excited about CPU and GPU mining with RandomX and ProgPoW for DigiByte. It just makes so much sense in every single way. It is better for the security of the network. It is better for the distribution of the DigiByte asset. It is better for the decentralization of the blockchain. It's going to allow anonymous participation, we'll get there in the end, bypassing KYC requirements of most exchanges. And it just ticks all of the boxes. So that's where I'm going to wrap this up. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope you've found this insightful, and I trust that, like me, you're more enthusiastic about RandomX and ProgPoW than ever before for all of those great reasons that I've just mentioned. I'll be doing follow-up videos specifically talking about the possibility of mobile mining, what's involved in that sort of thing, other ideas that we have around CPU and GPU mining as well. But if you do have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I'll happily respond. So big shout out, thank you to everybody who's joined me in the live chat today. Really appreciate it. You can reach me on Twitter if you do have questions. Otherwise, I'm at DigiByte_chilling. I'll see you all in the next video, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.